We'll figure it out. I think you're right here. Yeah, exactly. Nice to see you. It all works out. It's going to be a miracle. Exactly right.
Hello, hello. Welcome. Thank you all for being here today. Ordinarily, I'm saying grab some food, grab a drink. It's a little bit different today. So thank you for joining us. Welcome. My name is Zach Bodner. I'm the president and CEO of the Oshman Family JCC here on the Toby Corrett campus for Jewish Life. Thank you. It is wonderful to welcome you all here today. A few people I want to thank before I kick us off. First of all, to Luba Palant and my team, to Julio, the AV folks, for putting this event together, for putting out the chairs, for making sure it's not too hot, but at least it's sunny, right? It could have gone either way. So thanks to my team, and to Ty Gregory, to Diane, to Karen Stiller, who's not able to be here, to Jessica, to the Jcrc folks from the Bay Area for really orchestrating this event and making this happen. Thank you guys for putting this together. Look, we here at the JCC, we're honored to host this event today. Our purpose here is to enrich lives, to build community, and to inspire Jewish journeys. We're here to help people create meaning and connections in their lives, the two things that everybody needs, meaning and connection. We're a second home for everybody, for the Jewish community, for the non-Jewish community, for old and young, for people of all backgrounds, all religions, all politics. We are a place that's trying to build the future. Our vision is to be the architects of the Jewish future, and that's why we work with incredible organizations like the Jcrc, so that we can envision a world filled with love and respect, and not just focus all our energies on fighting hatred and bigotry. Our hope is that we have a world that's made up of people filled with pride. So our agendas don't have to just be anti-hate, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, but pro-pride. Pride in our backgrounds, in our heritages, in our ethnicities, in our religions. That's what this place is about. But unfortunately, it still exists, the bigotry and the hatred. And we become that first portal of entry for so many members of our community. They turn to us because they know us. Like the time a couple years ago when a student at a local high school came to us because a teammate on his water polo team was putting up Holocaust and Nazi imagery on his social media feed and wanted our help and advice on how to deal with it. Or the time last year when a number of high school students came to us and they were happy that finally their school had put out a statement condemning all the anti-Semitism, but then really frustrated that 24 hours later, the school rescinded the statement, apologizing for dipping their toe into the waters of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And then there was the time just a few months ago when a parent reached out complaining that her student was facing in her school a history teacher that was talking about Israel as an apartheid state. This is still happening all over, which is why I'm pleased that the JCC can be a venue for us to have this conversation, for us to stand up proudly and condemn this sort of hatred. I'm grateful that the Jcrc has reached out to us and been our partners in this effort. So I stand before you today to proudly say, here I am. Here we are. Here you are. Thank you for being here today. I want to thank a few people in particular. My old friend, Congresswoman Eshoo. We've known each other for many years. My old friend, Rob Bonta. We knew each other even back in the day. We went to school together. We played soccer together. I want to thank him for being here. My newer friend, our Attorney General who's done so much for the state of California. My newer friends, Jeff Rosen, Marc Berman, Joe Smitty, and it's just great to have so many of our community's leaders here today standing with us. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you the Executive Director of the Jcrc, Ty Gregory.
Thanks so much, Zach, and good afternoon, everybody. Before we continue, I just want to give a round of applause to our elected and civic leaders behind me for joining us and declaring today, "Here I am." Let's all say it together. Here I am. Here I am in Hebrew is Hineni. Today we declare that our community belongs in Palo Alto. We belong in Santa Clara. We belong in the Bay Area and in this country. Jcrc started this program about a year ago, recognizing that our community was lacking a sense of belonging in the Bay Area. We saw a surge of anti-Semitism and hate towards our community originating during the pandemic. We saw a spike after the Gaza-Israel escalation in May of last year, and we heard from countless parents and teachers and elected officials and community members that they were being scapegoated, that they were facing a surge of anti-Semitism, that much like our AAPI neighbors, we were being held collectively punished by something happening overseas. And even though that surge has since passed, there is a palpable sense of frustration and understanding that we are living in a new normal, and we cannot allow anti-Semitism to be normalized in our communities or in this country. So let's all say it together one more time. Here I am. So what we want to do today, and I want to thank everyone for live streaming from around the Bay Area and to the press who have joined us, we want to have a conversation quickly about what anti-Semitism looks like today. The Jcrc brought together 50 of our organizations, our synagogues, our JCCs, our family service agencies, our federation, to talk about what anti-Semitism looks like in 2022. And here are some truths that we came up with. Number one, Jews, and only Jews, have the right to define our own oppression, like other communities do. Too often that opportunity of talking about our experiences are taken from us. And we need to create that space to talk about this issue. Number two, different Jews experience anti-Semitism differently. If you're an Orthodox Jew, you are probably more visible and you will face a higher likelihood of a hate crime, for example. Or if you're a Jew of color, you experience anti-Semitism at the intersection of racism. As a gay Jew, for example, I experienced it at the intersection of homophobia. So it's important to understand that our community is not monolithic and that different members of our community are going to experience anti-Semitism differently. Number three, Jews should not be held responsible for the actions of any government overseas. This is an ancient form of anti-Semitism where every Jew is held liable for something that some other Jew does, or even the state of Israel does. That's totally unacceptable. There should not be any sense of collective punishment, regardless of how we feel about the government of Israel's policies. Number four, anti-Semitism needs to be taken as seriously as other forms of oppression. Yes, most Jews are white presenting in this country. That protects us from racism. That doesn't protect us from anti-Semitism. So we need to be able to have our own conversation, as other communities do, to talk about the particularities of what anti-Semitism is and how we experience it. Number five, anti-Semitism when it comes to Israel is not too controversial to talk about. Criticizing the policy of any government is totally fair game. I'm sure everyone on this stage has criticism of a past administration or a present administration's policies. That's no different when it comes to Israel or any other government, right? But to deny Israel's right to exist, that every other people on the planet has a right to, is anti-Semitism, and we need to know that the lines can be crossed and are being crossed. Lastly, anti-Semitism is not a political football. Too often, those on the left only identify anti-Semitism on the right. And all too often, those on the right only identify anti-Semitism on the left. You can't wage half the battle. You can't turn it into a political football. This issue is too important and too entrenched on both extremes for us to be playing footsie with this issue. It exists everywhere, And for those of us on the left who are part of the progressive movement, it's our job to root it out in the progressive movement. And for conservatives in this country, with their relationships, their responsibility is to root it out on their side of the aisle. That's where we have credibility. That's where our friends and families are. So we need to do the work in our own spaces to uproot anti-Semitism and hate before we can start talking about what someone else's problems are. And so we ask everyone to invite everyone to commit to joining us in that complicated but necessary journey. And finally, what I want to say is, a lot of folks ask me, why don't we have a press conference to talk about all forms of hate? That time has come, continues to come, and needs to continue to happen. Our community is there for the African American community, the Latino community, the API community, the LGBTQ community. We have to work together to combat all forms of hatred. And at the same time, we are asking for a space with Here I Am for us to talk about what makes anti-Semitism unique so that all of our allies, and we have a ton of amazing allies on this stage, can join us in that fight. And let's give them a round of applause again for standing with the Jewish community today. With that, I want to thank my amazing staff, especially Karen Stiller, for putting this event on. And with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. You want to, where is he? There he is, come on up. Attorney General Rob Bonta was appointed as California's first Filipino-American AG in 2021 and has long been dedicated to confronting all forms of hate and discrimination, including, of course, anti-Semitism. Attorney General Bonta has taken many steps to confronting rising hate crimes by convening leaders, including us, to propose solutions, hosting conversations with marginalized communities, and working to improve hate crime reporting. Your 2021 report was invaluable to us, and hiring staffers dedicated to addressing rising hate. Attorney General Bonte has been a steadfast supporter of Jcrc's Here I Am initiative. He joined us in San Francisco last year. And he's recorded his own allyship video with Here I Am, which you're all welcome to do, hereiamstories.org. And AG Bonte, I'm honored to call you a friend. I know Zach, your soccer buddy from Yale, is happy to have you here. And we just really appreciate the deepening relationship between our Jewish community and you with your leadership in this role. So with that, please take it away.
Well, thank you all, and thank you, Tyler, for the very kind introduction. I'm honored to be here with all of these incredible leaders, elected officials, civic leaders coming together, speaking with one voice today. Want to give a very special shout out to a longtime friend of mine, Zach Bodner, who I have just the deepest amount of respect, admiration for, and affection for. He has been not just a friend, but an advisor, a counselor, a thought partner. And I know he's a tremendous leader. You all know that, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to shout him out. He's also an awesome soccer goalie. So I don't know if he's going to. So was Marc Berman, by the way, the MVP in the legislative soccer match. But just wonderful leaders here. I'm proud to stand with all of you. Thank you for all you do. And thank you to the Jewish Community Relations Council and the Here I Am campaign for your leadership on this very important issue. We can't convene enough. We can't speak out enough. It is so important each time and every time that we do it, and proud to gather again today. And I want to be absolutely clear as the leader of the largest state Department of Justice in the nation, as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state of California. I want to be absolutely clear that anti-Semitism has no place in California. Thank you. Not here, not anywhere, not now, not ever. Period. Full stop. And the rise in hate that we've seen targeting the Jewish community is unacceptable. It's inexcusable. It's outrageous. It is not something that we do and can ever tolerate. Period. This summer, my office released new statewide hate crime data. And it's important to allow for data to inform us of the current challenges and to make it clear so we're sober and clear-eyed as we respond. very alarmingly, anti-Semitic hate crimes increased by 32% between 2020 and 2021. A record increase. Sadly, tragically, 152 reported incidents targeting the Jewish community across the state. And of course, these are statistics, but they're more than numbers. These are incidents that represent an attack on a person, on a neighbor, a family member, a Californian, an entire community. And this is why today, with the full force of the law behind me, I am here to say enough, and I'm here to say, here I am. Here I am with you, standing by your side as we combat hate in our communities. Here I am to say loud and clear, there is no place for anti-Semitism and hate in California or anywhere, anytime. And this moment requires more than words. It requires work. And at the DOJ, we will continue to work alongside our partners in community and law enforcement. We've been doing that. We've been working through our Office of Community Awareness, Response, and Engagement to sit with community, to understand the impacts and the challenges, and to co-create solutions together. We've done that work through new guidance and resources that we've issued to the public and to law enforcement as we take on the forces of hate throughout California. We've also done that through our Civil Rights Enforcement Section and our Racial Justice Bureau and well beyond. In the California Department of Justice that I'm honored to serve in, fighting hate is a top priority. It's work that's important, and it's work that, to me, is personal. As an Asian American, I have felt the sting of hate. I have felt the pain of prejudice, unfortunately, like too many of us up here have and out in our society have as well. So many of us from diverse backgrounds have endured and suffered and felt hate in its many, many forms. But the important part of the story is it doesn't have to be that way. We have agency. We can say enough, and we can say that together and raise our voices loud and clear. So again, I'm proud to join the elected and civic leaders here in doubling down in our effort to support the Jewish community and fight back against anti-Semitism and hate. And as I want the Jewish community to know, your Attorney General has your back. Because no matter where you're from, whether it's Tel Aviv or Tampa, Palo Alto or Prague, everyone belongs here in California. As we fight hate, we fight it together. There is nothing we can't do when we do it together. And together we say, here I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General, as always, for your leadership. After our next speaker, as I do roll call, you see those empty seats back there? That's for all of you so that you don't have to schwitz for the next hour. So just know that we've taken you into consideration. Yeah. There you go. You could applause. That's a good applause. Anyways, it's my honor to welcome up to the stage, please mind the gap, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. Anna Eshoo's represented Silicon Valley in the House of Representatives since 1993. She's the only Assyrian-American in Congress, and one of only 2 Armenian-American women in Congress. Throughout her career, she's consistently stood with the Jewish community, regularly speaking out against anti-Semitic incidents and attending religious and cultural events across the community. In addition, Congresswoman, we appreciate your efforts to support the special relationships between the United States and Israel in advocating for 2 states. We're honored to have you here with us today and grateful that you stand up for our community's needs and the needs of other communities experiencing acute sense of hate and discrimination at this time. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're wonderful. Thank you. Great remarks. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Here we are. And what a display of support of community leadership, elected leadership from our region. I think this is an eloquent statement about our region, about our people, about our values. I'm so proud to be a part of this, and I want to thank Jcrc, Zach, it's great to see you, and thank you for your special leadership. I want to thank Karen Stiller and Jonathan Mincer because they organized today's event. They made everything look easy and go smoothly, and obviously their work has brought us all together. Now, over the past several years, there's been a surge of anti-Semitism in our country. In our country. Shame on us. Shame on us. This threatens the safety of synagogues and community centers. It has a chilling effect on expressions of Jewish identity, and it challenges our own fundamental values as a free and tolerant society. These are the things that we are the proudest of as Americans. And this disturbing trend has manifested itself in horrific acts of violence, including the 2018 killing of 11 worshipers at Shabbat services at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in our nation's history. So it wasn't decades and decades ago. It's not part of a dark past. It's part of our very recent history in our country. And there have been more recent tragedies in California, in Poway, California, Jersey City, New Jersey, and Colleyville, Texas. And while these violent acts are the most heinous expressions of anti-Semitism, they represent a small fraction of the thousands of anti-Semitic incidents that American Jews are being subjected to. The Anti-Defamation League recorded over 2,700 incidents in 2021, a 34% increase over 2020, and the highest number ever recorded. So this is not anything that we can regard to push into the minor lane. This is major. This is taking place every day in California and across our country. Sadly, California has not been spared of this disturbing national trend. Now, because of the critical work of Attorney General Bonta, and General, thank you for being here in person. You honor all of us. You honor all of us. Because of his very important work leading the California Department of Justice, we now have a comprehensive data showing that anti-Semitic incidents in our state rose by 32%. Facts and figures are very important to underscore the case as we make it to the larger community. And behind each one of these statistics are real people. We can never forget that. You know, you read the statistics and sometimes they're dizzying, they're frustrating, and we feel so challenged by them. That's why I'm so grateful, we're all so grateful to Jcrc for launching the Here I Am initiative. I don't know how many of you have gone online to hear the stories. They are so powerful. Stories are powerful. No one can say to any of these individuals, you don't know what you're talking about. So what are we doing in Congress? Very recently, together with over 90 colleagues, I called on the Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas to have the administration adopt a whole-of-government strategy to combat anti-Semitism and to protect Jewish communities from hate-filled violence. I worked successfully with the House Appropriations Committee for funding for the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. This is really an important program because these dollars come right into our local communities to provide grants to the synagogues, to the community centers to strengthen their security. I have voted and Congress passed appropriations. I think you're all sophisticated. Appropriations means money, okay? Passed appropriations legislation earlier this year in March that increased the funding for this really critical program by $70 million. That's an increase of 39%. Very few efforts get a 39% increase. But it underscores the seriousness of what this is all about. And I made sure I wrote to every synagogue in our congressional district in case they weren't aware of this program to assist them and to back up these grants for whatever their needs are. I'm very proud that President Biden signed into law last year the Jabara Hire No Hate Act. And of course, I've voted for it. That legislation also provides new grant funding for yet another program. So I can go through a long list. I think I've spoken maybe long enough. But let me just say this. These are important legislative accomplishments. We have to keep building on them. We can never be satisfied with what we've already done and not keep the pedal to the metal. Anyone in this region that's even thinking of a hateful act, whose heart may be filled with hate, we welcome you here. We stretch our hands and our hearts out to you. But if you continue doing what you have done, we're here to say you're going to be stopped and you're going to be held accountable. You're going to be held accountable by law enforcement. I'll just end on this note because I think it's such a beautiful one. In 1790, our first president, George Washington, articulated this promise in his famous letter to a Rhode Island synagogue. He wrote that the U.S. government, quote, gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance. It requires only that they who live under its protection should conduct themselves as good citizens. So it's with the values from the birth of our nation, the best of us, that we all say, here I am. Thank you, everyone. May God bless all of you. May God bless our efforts and keep our democracy strong. Thank you.
Congresswoman, thank you again for your longtime friendship with the Jewish community. So to all my friends back here, I'll make you a deal. I'll let you take your seats, but you got to go directly to your seats. Does that sound good? Okay, so I'm going to do roll call. Please carefully, Zach and I would appreciate the carefully part. Feel free to start taking your seats, and I'm going to lead us in roll call. So a big thank you to our elected officials and community leaders here today. From the House of Representatives, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo. From the state of California, Attorney General Rob Bonta. Senator Dave Cortezzi. Assemblymember Marc Berman. From the County of Santa Clara, District Attorney Jeff Rosen. Supervisor Joe Simitian. From the City of Campbell, Councilmember Sergio Lopez. From the City of Los Altos, Councilmember Nesa Flieger and Vice Mayor Sally Meadows. From the City of Los Gatos, Councilmember Matthew Hudes and Councilmember Mariko Sayak. From the City of Morgan Hill, Councilmember Gina Borgioli. From the City of Mountain View, Councilmember Margaret Abe-Koga and Mayor Lucas Ramirez. From the City of Palo Alto, Mayor Pat Burt, Vice Mayor Lydia Koo, Councilmember Greer Stone. From the City of San Jose, Councilmember David Cohen. From Santa Clara School District, President Jody Muirhead. From the City of Sunnyvale, Mayor Larry Klein. and Councilmember Tony Spitaleri. From the Fremont Union High School District and representing Otto Lee, President Naomi Nakano Matsumoto. From the Los Altos School Board District, School Board Vice President Jessica Spicer. From the University A.M.E. Zion Church, Pastor Kaloma Smith. From People Acting in Community Together San Jose, Reverend Nancy Palmer Jones. Representing State Senator Josh Becker, council member from East Palo Alto, Antonio Lopez. From the Health Trust, CEO Michele Liu. And from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, Executive Vice President Gina Dalma. Usually I say hold your applause, but I think it's better when we all applaud. Before I move on to the Jewish organizations, is there anybody up here that I missed from our elected office and community partners? Love it when we bat 1,000. Let's give them all a hand again. And I'd like to give a big thank to all of our partner Jewish organizations on stage with us today. The Anti-Defamation League, the American Jewish Committee, Congregation Beth Am, Congregation Beth David, Congregation Emek Beracha, Congregation Emeth, Congregation Kolamet, Congregation Shir Hadash, Congregation Sinai, Facing History and Ourselves, Hebrew Free Loan, Hillel at Stanford, Hillel of Silicon Valley, the Holocaust Center of JFCS, the Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund, Jewish Family Services of Silicon Valley, the South Peninsula Hebrew Day School, and Temple Emmanuel. Let's give all of our partners in Silicon Valley, Jewish partners in Silicon Valley, a huge round of applause. All right, folks, let's get you out of the sun. Thank you so much. Senator, you're up next, so you can stay up here. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my partner and friend Diane Fisher, the director of the Silicon Valley Jewish Community Relations Council.
Thank you very much, Ty, and I'm very pleased to partner with both Zach and Ty for this important opportunity to speak together about anti-Semitism. So today I have the honor of introducing Senator Dave Cortezzi. Senator Cortezzi represents the 15th Senate District, which encompasses much of Santa Clara County. Through decades of public service, Senator Cortezzi has always been a strong interfaith partner. He's participated in our Interfaith Passover Seder, and he spoke last year at Los Gaddiston's United Against Hate when their town was just inundated with anti-Semitism, anti-Asian hate, and anti-LGBT hate. I'm grateful for the many conversations that we've had about how our respective faith traditions really align in common cause when it comes to how we treat people and how we're compelled to stand up against hatred. Community relations runs deep and are meaningful with Senator Dave Cortezzi, so we are proud to have Senator Cortezzi stand with the Jewish community today as we have stood together for so many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and all of you. As much as I want to speak, it was tempting to follow my colleagues down, sit down and put my back to the sun. Maybe that'll be encouragement for me to be brief. First and foremost, I think we all agree, I hope we all agree, that it's just a tremendous asset to have an Attorney General who's willing to take on the tough issues, and not just the tough issues on behalf of California, but the tough issues on behalf of the nations. I was so happy to see our AG, Rob Bonta, here. And I want all of you to know that my colleagues in the legislature fight very, very hard for all of you and for all Californians. But we have a very, very robust Jewish caucus that you can't help but be proud of every time they rise to give voice to not just anti-Semitism, but the various oppressions that we see day in and day out in the state capitol occurring in this otherwise beautiful state of California. Marc Berman, your hometown hero, Scott Wiener from San Francisco, for those of you who are from there, Josh Becker, also from this area, just to name a few, and the work that outgoing Senator Bob Hertzberg did to usher through one of the most important bills of the session this year to make sure that the Nazi swastika would be codified as an expression of hate speech in the state of California. Sometimes you wonder how things like this go so long without being addressed. But these are just indications of work that's going on day in and day out. Let me say this, I consider myself a First Amendment purist, and I try to live by that, and I try to legislate that way. But the fact of the matter is, anti-Semitism is not protected speech. Anti-Semitism is not protected speech. Those expressions have no place in any kind of public forum. You know that, I know that. The judicial branch has recognized that. As I said, our AG is on top of that. But I thought this year, and I'd be interested to know if my colleagues agree with me, I thought this year the legislature stepped up and started to say, look, this isn't just an issue of the judicial branch. This isn't just an issue of interpreting what is okay to say and what isn't in a courtroom. This is something that we need to act on. And there was numerous pieces of legislation, and believe me, having grown up as a son of a legislator, I don't give long speeches about assembly bills and Senate bills and everything in them. But AB 587 requires transparency from social media companies in this space, in this hate speech space. That sounds simple. Again, it sounds like something that would already occur. But I'll tell you, and some of you know this, we're going to need help from Anna Eshoo and our members of Congress to break through the protections that internet platforms have from being held accountable when this kind of thing happens. We can codify it all we want, and I'm glad we did, but we're going to need help in making sure that when you bring a suit, when you bring a claim, when that happens, whoever it is, that those remedies are available to you. It's not been the case. That has not been the case. I mentioned the swastika issue. That wasn't an easy issue, although I said it probably should have happened a long time ago. It's not an easy issue because you're dealing with expressions, you're dealing with symbolism, and you're dealing with symbolism that in some traditions are ordinary, have nothing to do. They're extraordinary on the plus side, on the positive side, on the profound side in a different way. And so again, I appreciate so much the legislature's willingness to dive in and work with the brightest minds in Sacramento to make sure to get that right, and I think we did get that right. Lastly, let me just thank Diane Fisher again for her work, and all of you here today. I want to thank you for really, in a sense, separating church and state. Of course we do that, and that was spoken to, but also standing for the other part of the First Amendment. We have a right, a fundamental right in this country, not only to express ourselves, but to express ourselves within our own traditions. And Diane, you've done such a tremendous job of making sure that Santa Clara County is a beacon of that kind of belief system throughout the world. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Senator. Speaking of the Jewish caucus, I'd like to invite up next Assemblymember Marc Berman. Since his election to the State Assembly in 2016, the Assemblymember has been a strong partner of Jcrc and the Santa Clara County Jewish community. He's been a steadfast voice on the impacts of rising anti-Semitism, the need for an inclusive ethnic studies curriculum in our schools, and responding to anti-Israel hate in our political spaces. The Assemblymember is a member of the Legislative Jewish Caucus in Sacramento. Let me just say for a second, this guy and his colleagues have done a tremendous job elevating the profile and the work of the Jewish caucus in the state legislature. We need a strong Jewish voice in Sacramento, and he is an integral part of it. We should all celebrate the work that the Jewish caucus is doing in Sacramento. He's an alumnus of Palo Alto High School and worked for Congresswoman Eshoo while in college. Assemblymember, thank you for all of your efforts on behalf of the community here in Sacramento and across the country, and we are all proud of you and your work.
Thank you, Ty. Here I am. I'm a son of Silicon Valley, but I'm a grandson of Holocaust survivors. And as great as it is to be here today and to see everybody today, I wish I wasn't here. I wish we didn't have to be here talking about the rise in anti-Semitism that's increasing in the Bay Area, in California, and across the country. But it's important that we are here. And I do want to note that it wasn't lost on me that out of the elected officials that have spoken so far, I'm the first Jewish elected official to speak so far, and I'm grateful to Attorney General Bonta, Congresswoman Eshoo, Senator Cortezzi, and all the non-Jewish community leaders who are here standing with us today, because we in the Jewish community know how important it is for us to have allies, for other folks to have our backs when we're being targeted, just like we'll have your back when you're being targeted. So I'm really grateful to everybody who's here today. And just want to talk a little bit about some of the work that the Jewish Caucus is doing. It is a kind of mighty and growing group in the California State Legislature, and we've had some big wins over the past couple of years, especially on the budget front. We've gotten, over the past 2 years, $50 million each year, $100 million total, for the state nonprofit security grant program. And that's a program, like the federal program that Congresswoman Eshoo mentioned, that provides funding to whether it's a synagogue or a mosque or a church or an LGBTQ center or any community organization that currently feels like they're under attack. And unfortunately, that's far too many. This is state funding that you can get to be able to improve the physical security of your home, of your area where you get together. And I actually was surprised when I was talking with a faith leader in my district last year, and we were talking about the program, and they said, and I think that person might be here today, but I can't remember exactly, and they said, actually, the process of applying for that grant was way easier than I expected. And you never hear that when it comes to state program. And that was Pastor Kaloma Smith. I thought it was you. And so, you know, the deadline for that is coming up in about a month and a half. And we're going to get out the word and make sure that every community organization, every nonprofit that thinks that they might be able to take advantage of that funding knows about it and that they have the opportunity to apply. Another big thing that we're focused on in the Jewish Caucus is education. Because it is shocking the lack or the lack of uneducated people around the Holocaust in our schools today. And it's just, and we wonder why anti-Semitism increases. We wonder why anti-Semitism spreads. We wonder why school kids, whether it's in Northern California or Orange County or San Diego, are doing things like the Heil Hitler at parties and getting caught on social media. We're not doing a good enough job educating them about the Holocaust. And so the Jewish Caucus has focused on Holocaust education with $10 million for the Museum of Tolerance to create a new, fully interactive, state-of-the-art exhibit on anti-Semitism in Los Angeles, $2.5 million to support the expansion of the Holocaust Museum in LA, and also $3 million to renovate and enhance Jewish Family and Children's Services Holocaust Center in San Francisco. So that's almost $20 million in the last 2 years to focus on Holocaust education. We need to do more for all communities, but especially for folks in the Jewish community who are feeling so targeted. So that's why I'm here today, and I'm just grateful to Jcrc, to the JCC, and to all the other organizations that are doing this good work and bringing us all together. So thank you very much for having me, and here I am. Thank you, sir. I forgot one thing, which I wanted to mention, which is, and Senator Cortese kind of alluded to this bill, a very important bill, AB 587, that was authored by the chair of the Jewish Caucus, Jesse Gabriel, who's both the chair of the Jewish Caucus. He's also my roommate in Sacramento. And this is a bill to require that social media companies be more transparent about what their policies are around hate speech on their platforms. And we have to recognize that even those of us who represent Silicon Valley, that some of the products that are being created in Silicon Valley are unintentionally contributing to the rise of anti-Semitism and the rise of hate in our communities. And so we all need to hold ourselves accountable. And as was alluded to earlier, there's anti-Semitism on the right. There's also anti-Semitism on the left in my party, the Democratic Party. So these are important things that even though that might make us uncomfortable based on where we live or where we work or where our friends work, yeah, these are important things that we talk about. And I know that everybody's going to work together to improve these policies. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Assemblymember, and I hope you and Jesse Gabriel don't fight over who does the dishes, and that's good, good, good. So before I introduce our next speaker, a lot of us have been reading about these flyer incidents that have been happening across the Bay Area, the accusation that Jews are behind COVID, accusations that Jews control the media. I think that there's a lot of alarm and concern around it. And we've had meetings with different district attorneys around the Bay Area in Marin and San Francisco with our next speaker. And the reality is this is protected free speech. But it's not just about the messenger of these incidents. It's about who could be listening. And that's one of the reasons why we're having this event today and why we've had these events in 3 other counties. We need to make sure that our allies and our community members recognize that we need to create a safe environment for Jews and other minorities. And so it's not just about who's speaking out in these anti-Semitic ways, but who could possibly be interpreting these messages, right? We have to be able to confront this kind of hate. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, District Attorney Jeff Rosen. Since 2011, Jeff Rosen has served as District Attorney of Santa Clara County and has become a nationally recognized leader in criminal justice reform. Among his many accomplishments, he's taken dozens of prosecutors and investigators to the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles to learn about the Holocaust, racial profiling, implicit bias, and the duty of law enforcement to safeguard people's rights. As the former president of Kaloma Synagogue and the son of a Holocaust survivor, D.A. Rosen often uses his platform to discuss the importance of his Jewish faith and connection to the state of Israel and experiences from his own background with anti-Semitism and hate. Thank you, District Attorney, for your friendship and dedication to the pursuit of justice.
Let me just say, getting to sit over there was a real machaya after being up here for a half an hour. So thank you so much for the warm introduction, Ty. The word hineni appears many times in the Torah. It's said by Abraham, Jacob, Moses, as well as the prophets Samuel and Isaiah. It literally means here I am. However, it means much more than that. It really means here I am, and I'm prepared and ready to do what is required of me, to do God's will. That's really what it means. Sadly, as district attorney, I know that a Jew in the United States is more likely to be the victim of a hate crime than any other American. Just let that sink in for a minute. A Jew in this country is by far more likely to be the victim of a hate crime than any other American. Why is that? You know, I could talk for hours about that, but we know anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred perpetrated by dictators and communists and fascists from the left and from the right. Here, in our blue, democratic, progressive bubble, many are quick to condemn anti-Semitism from the right, from the Proud Boys to white nationalists to neo-Nazis. I've received and continue to receive many emails and phone calls to me directly espousing this type of anti-Semitism. And I'm sure after today's event, I'll have a little uptick in that. As the son and grandson of Holocaust survivors of 3 Nazi concentration camps, including Bergen-Belsen, where my father was liberated in 1945, these emails and phone calls make me quite angry. But I say, hineni, I'm here, and I'm prepared to do what I'm required to do, what God's will is. Sadly, many in our blue bubble refuse to condemn anti-Semitism from the left, which often disguises itself in the demonization and delegitimization of the State of Israel, the only Jewish state in the world, which is a liberal, progressive democracy with equal rights for all, that is surrounded, and as we often say, in a tough neighborhood, but surrounded by dictatorships that murder and oppress their own people, much less anyone who is not like their people. Because I have seen the anti-Semitism from the left and right, a couple months ago, I sent to all of my elected DAs, my DA colleagues in California, there are 58 of us, as well as all of the local police chiefs in our county, 4 short booklets about anti-Semitism, its history, its origins, from the left as well as from the right, the delegitimization of Israel and how that becomes anti-Semitic. And again, we're trying to educate and to change people's hearts and minds. One last anecdote. I traveled to Israel a few years ago with other district attorneys from the Bay Area, judges and police chiefs, to exchange best practices with our Israeli colleagues about combating human trafficking, and to learn how Israel had become an international leader in holding sex and labor traffickers accountable while also helping trafficked victims heal and recover, most of whom are not Jewish, are Arab, and are Muslim. It was a very fruitful and productive trip, and I wrote about it and talked about it. Sadly, not long after I returned, the Santa Clara County Democratic Central Committee put forth a resolution that violated the United States State Department's rules about anti-Semitism masked as demonization and delegitimization of the State of Israel, and also falsely accused me and our group of DAs, police chiefs, and judges of, quote, learning how to oppress Palestinians and teach local law enforcement about it. This was a total and complete lie. Hitler would have admired such a big lie and would have smiled that it was coming from the left. As your district attorney, who is a proud, knowledgeable, and observant Jew and Zionist, who seeks peace, brotherhood, empathy, and understanding with everyone, I say, Hineni, here I am. And my prayer is that Hineni becomes Hine Anachnu. Here we are. We are prepared. We are ready to do what is required to rid anti-Semitism from our community so that we may live, all of us together, in peace and survive and thrive. Shalom.
Thank you, District Attorney. You know, we know what radical anti-Semitism and violent anti-Semitism looks like, but it can be entrenched in our conversational awareness of the issue. And I'll give you a good example. If you blame money in politics and you're on the left, you might say Sheldon Adelson's the problem. If you blame money in politics and you're on the right, you might say George Soros is the problem. And if you hate capitalism, you might say Mike Bloomberg's the problem. What's the problem with all 3 of those statements? You're blaming a Jew. And so it's important to recognize when our casual conversational, discourse in politics is inherently anti-Semitic. This isn't just about people who intend to hurt us. This is something we have to think about in our day-to-day lives and how we are misrepresenting the Jewish community in all of our socioeconomic diversity. So thank you, DA, for your leadership and for leading by example. Next, I'd like to call up a new friend. Councilmember, come on up. Antonio Lopez. He's on the Council of East Palo Alto, but he's also a staffer for State Senator Josh Becker, so he'll be playing dual roles today. And I'm really happy that you went on our latest Israel trip, Antonio, and we had a lot of fun together, but what happens in Tel Aviv stays in Tel Aviv. So Senator Becker couldn't join us today, but we're honored to have you as his district representative. And As Northern Santa Clara County's representative for the senator, you've been a steadfast champion of our community. And the senator, of course, is a member of the California Legislative Jewish Caucus, like Assemblymember Berman, and is a longtime supporter of Jcrc and the Here I Am initiative. During the last legislative cycle, Senator Becker championed Jcrc priorities such as improving voter access, addressing climate change, and funding the many Jewish programs that the Assemblymember mentioned. Councilmember Lopez, we're really excited to have you today. Please take it away.
So in the Mexican tradition, we have to say hi to everybody before we say something. So it's part of my own background. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Antonio Lopez. I'm honored to be here in solidarity with you. Here we are, as the wonderful DA Rosen said. And as Tyler so graciously pointed out, in May of this year, I was nominated by my boss, State Senator Becker, who sends his regrets for not being here. He's on the East Coast, taking his family, his kids to colleges, so it's very exciting to pass that generation on. As I said, I took a trip to Israel. This was in May 12th to the 22nd. Ramadan was had just finished. We had different traditions that we were celebrating, sponsored by the Jcrc. And I should say, I took it as someone who growing up saw little to no Jews in his community, hometown of East Palo Alto, who in college converted to Islam, and therefore was steeped in conversations about Palestine, about the Middle East, about politics. And so let me just take a moment to say I've witnessed this in those wonderful 10 days that we will not disclose what happened, like Ty said. There is absolutely a way we can secure a Jewish future. Absolutely. And at the same time, ensure that everyone has human rights, that everyone has a decent place to live, education, clean water, self-determination for their communities. These are not oxymoronic. These are not contradictory. And it is the work of our community to see that into fruition in our generation, in our lifetimes. Let's do it in our lifetime. And it starts here by supporting the JCC as well as the Jcrc. You know, in Israel, we spoke to members of parliament, leaders of Arabic, Hebrew schools. They had immersion programs where kids on both sides of the community learned each other's languages. They broke bread at tender ages of 5, 6, 7 years old, right? We met foreign dignitaries. We even went to the West Bank, the other side of the so-called security wall. And as a Mexican American, as someone whose parents crossed 30 years ago a border, not too similar, you can imagine the kind of feeling seeing that giant slab of cement compelled in me. Anti-Semitism is more than just solidarity with the Jewish people, in my opinion. It is a declaration of what kind of world we choose to live in 2022. What will it be? A world where regrettably we're at times isolated with each other in our respective echo chambers, left, right, Jewish, non-Jewish? Or will it be one where we genuinely show up for each other, where we dialogue, where we learn and lean in each other's disagreements? In the Quran, there's a verse which reads, "Whoever saves a life, it is as if though he has saved the lives of all mankind." I imagine that in the Torah, there's a similar verse, much like in, they're all similar, as people forget. We forget they all have the same prophets. I mean, it's such a violence of how we're not taught this in schools. So let us use our shared books of knowledge. Let us be ambassadors for one another. Let us not wait for another Poway, California, another Colleyville, Texas, another Charlottesville, South Carolina. Let's not wait for the next event where we feel like we have to do this. Let's be proactive about it. Let's learn from each other. Let's be okay with the disputes, but do it respectfully. Do it with love. Do it over falafels and hummus. We can do this. We have the technology, as the movies say. We have the capability. Let's take a moment to love in public. As the great Dr. King said, what he called justice, he said it was love in public. Let's not wait for tragedy to strike at our doorstep. Let's not wait for another synagogue or a center is under threat. Let's use today to lock arms, to say yesterday was enough, and that today is for us, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So speaking of love and compassion, it is my great honor to introduce Michele Liu. So Michele, come on up, please. Michele serves as the CEO of the Health Trust, a nonprofit foundation, yes, focused on building health equity in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of other compassionate people like living on you here today, yeah? She has also served as president and CEO of Asian Americans for Community Involvement, or ACI, for more than a decade. And I know she's always proud to say she served as the district director for former California state legislator Joe Simitian, yes? But mainly, Michele has long been known as a regional leader who really walks the walk when it comes to diversity and inclusion, both in the policy work that she's been involved in and in her personal relationships across a broad spectrum of the community. With the rise of anti-Asian hate during the pandemic, Michele has been called on to educate the public, to help build resilience within the Asian communities, and help all of us stand as allies to end that ugly hatred. And meanwhile, she has always been a profound ally to the Jewish community, someone I have been really grateful to be able to call in difficult moments. Thank you, Michele, for being such a compassionate and powerful ally.
Well, I first have to thank Diane. We have been friends for 20 plus years. She is a gem in the community, and it's an honor to work alongside her. Well, it's such an honor to be here in this wonderful space, named in memory of my Palo Alto classmate, Jessica Saul. May her memory be a blessing. And to be right here in my hometown of Palo Alto. Unfortunately, in the last few years, I have never felt less safe in my hometown than ever before. I find myself walking along the tree-lined streets of my neighborhood, past Joe Simitian's house, past Mayor Burt's house, but I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm wondering if somebody is following me. I'm concerned about the safety of my 80-plus-year-old dad, a proud Chinese-American resident of Muldaw Senior Residences right here. He's here in the 4th row. But I'm worried about him going out and being a victim of Asian hate. And I know the reality is that for many of us, these days, we're looking over our shoulders. We're hesitating before we come into courtyards like this one. We're even saying no to going to gatherings in sacred spaces. And that's why I wanted to be with you today. As an Asian American, I join in solidarity with the Jewish community, just as you stood with the Asian Pacific Islander community when Asian hate began to rise in the spring of 2020. Thank you. The Asian community and the Jewish community, we've borne the brunt of this model minority myth, this idea that we're privileged and we're powerful, and therefore we don't need protection. But in these challenging times, we all need to protect each other. We need to stand united against prejudice and hate. Together, we can stop Asian hate. We can embrace that Black lives matter, and we can end anti-Semitism. It's an honor to be with you today. Thank you.
You know, Michele, our heart breaks for what's happening in this country with the API community under siege. And as soon as we saw in the newspaper the term China virus, we took out a full-page ad in Tsingtao, one of the daily newspapers in San Francisco, translated into Cantonese with the headline, "The Jewish community knows how this feels." Because we had that instinctual reaction of being scapegoated. And sure enough, a few months later, we too were scapegoated. So we feel it in what we call our kishkas. We feel it in our gut. What's happening to our API neighbors, and one of our top priorities at Jcrc is learning how we can best support Asian communities across the Bay Area. Pastor, it's your turn to shine. Come on up. Reverend Kaloma Smith serves as the pastor of University A.M.E. Zion Church in Palo Alto and is a member of the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission. Reverend Smith is a longtime friend of local Jewish community organizations around here, and he joined Jcrc and Hartman's Interfaith Clergy Mission to Israel in 2016 and organized the 2019 trip with members of his church and congregation Kaloma with Rabbi Booth. He's also spoken at many Jewish events, including a Jcrc town hall on anti-Semitism. He's known for his incredible leadership fighting racism and advancing equity in Palo Alto and beyond, with efforts such as the 21-Day Equity Challenge and advocating for open access to Foothills Park. He partnered with Kaloma to lead Fighting Racism, a Night of Hope and Memory, a conversation about the need for the Jewish community to confront racism that drew hundreds of participants from 8 synagogues in 6 states. He's a regular presence at our community celebrations and a long supporter of critical and holy interfaith work. Reverend Smith, thank you for joining us and for your work bringing communities together. Let's give him a hand.
As I was sitting here today, I was trying to figure out how not to say what everybody else said because it was said so well. But this center has a very specific memory for me. I remember the morning that the Tree of Life Synagogue was shot up in a massacre. I reached out to Rabbi David Booth at Kaloma, and I came that morning. I think the DA was actually in synagogue that day, and worshiped with Congregation Kaloma right here in this Jcrc. And what that moment showed me as I looked around the room and I saw grandmothers and mothers and kids and teenagers have a palatable fear as somebody entered the door. It reminded me of the same fear and angst and anxiety I felt after Charleston and every time a public space is shot up. The reality is that we as faith communities, we as people of faith, we as people here, we need to say, "Here I am," more loudly and profoundly than we've ever said it before. We live in a world where the forces of darkness, of evil, of hate, of anti-Semitism will scream, shout from the top of the mountain on a Facebook post, in a newspaper article, in a conspiracy video, and it requires the good people of the world to be the light that shines so brightly that it replaces the darkness. There's a South African word called "sebo bueno," which basically means, I see you. I see you as a person. I see you in your experience. I see you in the life you've lived. I see you in every moment that you are. And in order for us to live in a better world, as I say, "Here I am," I need to see you as you are. You are divine creations. You are people. You deserve the right. You deserve the freedom. You deserve everything to live your life as you choose without somebody defining, defiling, or degenerating you. So here I am, standing here, not because it's a political statement, not because it's something that's a great news conference with a lot of really important people, but because I have friends that are lifelong friends in the Jewish community, and they're good people, and they're truly good people. And they have stood with me and my church when Charleston was shot up. In the same way they stand with me, I stand with them. Here I am.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. I feel very seen. I feel very seen right now. Thank you all for that. So as we close out today, I am feeling pretty confident that our allyship against anti-Semitism can and will make a real difference. My friend, the Reverend Nancy Palmer-Jones, gave me the sentiments that I want to share that carry us forward today. She said, we can fight anti-Semitism with hearty solidarity, with fierce determination, and with love. Right? If education is what we need, if love is what we need, we can provide that. But if we need to stand loud and powerfully against hate when that is needed, we can do that. Your words and presence today mean a great deal and define the kind of community we all want to live in. So on behalf of both the Jewish Community Relations Councils, the JCC, and all of our sponsoring synagogues and agencies, we extend a deep gratitude to all of you for standing with the Jewish community today. We invite you to continue speaking out in your respective circles of influence, and we encourage you to record your own experience. Go on Here I Am, stories.org, record your own story, either of anti-Semitism or of being an ally to the Jewish community, because we all know that narrative is what changes hearts and minds, and we're here to do that. And as we're coming to the Jewish New Year in a couple of weeks, this has been a particularly meaningful moment to reflect and rededicate ourselves to compassion and justice. We look forward to the new year with a sense of hope and possibility that anti-Semitism will be ended in our community, and we will all work together with a unified purpose toward a strong and healthy community. So please just join me in one last unified call. Here I am, here we are. Here I am, here we are. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you all so much again for being here. Drive safe.